The Tessavite call their crossing hall the Vithrani, the place of reading, and they mean that literally. There are no guards in the usual sense. There are no turnstiles, no document scanners, no glass partition with a board officer on the far side. There are 12 low stone tables arranged in 2 rows, and at each table sits a reader with a bundle of knotted cord in their lap and their eyes on whoever is approaching. The hall is vaulted, pale gray stone, and in the afternoon the light through the clerestory windows falls in 4 long parallel columns that cross the floor like the bars of something immense. When I walked in for the 3rd time in 2 days, I noticed those columns of light had moved westward by the width of my hand. Sundown was 4 hours off. We did not have 4 hours. HFY, our lead diplomat, was already at table 6 when I arrived. She was standing very still. That was how I knew it was bad. HFY moved constantly in normal circumstances, shifting her weight, turning a pen, adjusting her cuffs. Standing completely still meant she had exhausted every option she was willing to show. The problem was a single cord in our transit bundle. Every human diplomatic crossing required a vedra, a knotted rope record encoding the party's purpose, their authorizing body, their intent, and their promised date of return. Our lead archivist, Tom, had prepared ours carefully over 3 weeks. He'd been trained by a Tessavite instructor. He had practiced the forms until his fingertips were raw. And somewhere in the 4th knot from the left, the one that encoded the return date clause, he had made an error. Not a large error. A single half-twist in the wrong direction, tightened correctly, which in the Tessavite's reading meant not "we will return before the appointed date," but "we will not return before the appointed date," which in their crossing law invalidated the entire authorization bundle. We had discovered this the previous afternoon. We had spent the night reconstructing the vedra from scratch with Tom dictating every movement and a Tessavite liaison watching. The new cord was perfect. The liaison had confirmed it. We had presented it that morning to the senior reader, a tall, narrow-shouldered woman named Verath, and she had taken it to the tribunal 3 readers at the far table who functioned as the crossing's final authority, and they had rejected it again. Not for the knot. For the provenance seal. Our original authorization bundle with the error had been logged in their record as submitted. A corrected bundle under their law required the correcting party to acknowledge the error in the original by adding a penitent cord, a small supplemental knot tied by the party responsible, not by any proxy, not by any trained delegate, tied by hand in the hall before the tribunal. The form of that penitent cord was specific. It was also a form none of us knew. We had been standing at table 6 for 40 minutes when I arrived. The tribunal was watching us without expression. Verath had set the corrected vedra on the table between us and was waiting. I stood next to HFY and looked at the cord and thought about the 4 columns of light on the floor. If we left without a cleared crossing, the accord returned to provisional status. Provisional status lapsed at the 90-day mark. We were at day 87. I don't know what made me look at my wrist. I had been wearing the bracelet since the morning I shipped out, 7 months earlier. My daughter Neva had made it from paracord she'd found in my field kit, 2 strands, red and gray, braided together, and finished with a knot she'd learned on a camping trip we'd taken the previous summer. I had taught her that knot because it was the one I used to hang a bare bag, a double-looped overhand with a half-hitch return that held its tension and released cleanly when you wanted it to. She had tied it the night before I left, slept on it, and put it on my wrist the next morning without ceremony. She said, "You can find your way home from anything if you know where the line is anchored." She was 14. I had not taken it off. I was looking at it, not thinking particularly, just aware of the weight of the cord on my wrist, when the junior reader at the near end of the tribunal table leaned forward. She was young by Tessavite standards, narrow-faced, with the close-cut white hair they kept for working readers so nothing snagged a cord during examination. She was looking at my wrist, not at me, at the bracelet. I held my arm out toward her without being asked. She stood up from her table and came to where I was standing and bent close and looked at the knot. She did not touch it. Tessavite readers never touched a cord without permission. That was one of the first things our briefing had covered. She studied it for perhaps a minute. Then she straightened and turned back to the tribunal table and said something to Verath in a voice that barely carried. I had enough of their language to catch fragments. What she said was, "The cord on his wrist. It is a statement of crossing." Verath came to the table. She was taller than the junior reader and had a different quality of stillness, less a waiting stillness than a stoning current stillness, something the flow moved around. She looked at the bracelet for a long time. Then she said, in the clipped trade tongue we'd been using all day, "Where did this cord come from?" I told her, "My daughter, before I left for this posting, she tied it herself." Verath said she knew the form. I said she knew the knot. She learned it from me. I use it for hanging weight in trees when I am in the field. There was a pause. The junior reader said something to the senior one more time very quietly. I didn't catch it. Then Verath turned to the full tribunal, all three readers at the far table, and said something longer. I understood perhaps a third of it. What I understood was, the structure is complete. Both strands, the binding, the return loop. The intent declared is present without error. The tribunal looked at each other. The cord my daughter had tied, the one she'd learned on a wet Thursday afternoon in late autumn under a canopy of beech trees in the Ardennes Valley, when she was 13 and mostly interested in whether we'd see any red squirrels carried in its structure, without her knowing, a complete and formally valid Vedra declaration. The double-looped overhand base encoded what their reading called a mutual passage acknowledgement. Two parties, two strands, entering the same space in agreement. The half-hitch return, the specific direction of the final tuck, the one that made the knot release cleanly when tension eased, read in their system as intent to return under the same terms. The only element of a standard crossing declaration it was missing was the error acknowledgement penitent cord. And under Tessavite law, a cord tied by a party's bloodkin who had not been trained to lie, their phrase, not mine. Their tradition holds that untrained knotters cannot falsify what the cord says because they don't know what it's saying, carried an automatic penitent weight. It was, as Verath explained it to me slowly and without any discernible change in expression, the most honest form a cord could take. She asked if she could log it. I said yes, on the condition that I kept wearing it. She considered that for a moment. I think she was deciding if the condition was in bad faith, and then she said that was acceptable. She asked me to hold my arm steady while the junior reader performed a formal reading, running her fingertips along every segment of the braid without disturbing the knot itself. The reading took about 2 minutes. The reader then returned to the tribunal table and transcribed it in a thin leather-bound ledger that, Verath told me afterward, had not had a new entry added to it in 31 years. The last entry before ours was a cord from the signing of a boundary agreement with a species I'd never heard of. The entry before that was from before first contact with any world other than their own. A chaverne was very still for a long time after Verath stamped our crossing bundle and handed it back. I walked through the gate into the far side of the hall with the bracelet on my wrist, the same as I'd walked in. The afternoon light was still falling in 4 long columns across the gray stone floor. We had 2 hours and 40 minutes until sundown, which was more than enough. The accord held. The 90-day mark came and went without incident. I wrote to Neva when I got back to the transit accommodation that night. I told her about the knot and what it had meant to the Tessavite readers and what it had done for us at the gate. I told her the story as straight and plain as I could, because she was 14 and she deserved to have it told straight. She wrote back 2 days later. She said, "I just wanted you to be able to find your way home. I didn't know it would work for everyone else too." I kept the letter. I keep both of them still, the letter and the cord, one in a box on my desk, one on my wrist. The Tessavite threshold crossing record has them logged as the same entry. I think they're right about that.